Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today is, well, it's pretty laser focused. We are cutting through this, global cascade of information.
There's so much of it.
There is. And we want to give you the absolute essentials, the unexpected connections, the critical science, and the geopolitical shifts that you really need to understand right now.
Exactly. We've collected a truly massive stack of developments, and we've deliberately prioritized those high-impact areas where breakthroughs in science and tech are just immediately colliding with volatile geopolitics and, evolving economic policy.
So you should think of this as your essential, highly detailed shortcut to being well-informed.
That's the goal.
We're moving from the microscopic to the cosmic today. We're going to start by launching South Korea's new indigenous space mission and then immediately crash back down to Earth.
Right back down.
To dissect the intensifying friction between the U.S. and China over advanced AI chips.
And we'll navigate some truly profound ethical quandaries involving generative artificial intelligence before shifting gears completely to medicine. We have to discuss a stunning breakthrough using what researchers are calling nanoflowers to potentially reverse cellular aging.
Nanoflowers. That sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel.
It really does.
And we will unpack the fascinating reality of it. But first, let's leave our increasingly complicated planet for a bit and head out into the new frontiers.
Let's do it.
Okay, so South Korea. They are making massive strides toward becoming a self-sufficient space power, and this week they really hammered that point home.
They certainly did. We saw the successful launch of their largest satellite yet, and it was carried by their own nationally developed Nuri rocket.
And this is more than just a successful rocket launch, right? It's a critical geopolitical signal.
Oh, absolutely. The launch happened at the Naros Space Center in Gohom, South Korea. And this was the fourth of 6 planned launches that are scheduled all the way through 2027.
So it shows a real commitment to, long-term capability building.
A very serious one.
And when we talk about self-sufficiency, I think the historical context here is so important. For decades, stretching all the way back to the 1990s, South Korea relied so heavily on foreign technologies and expertise to get its satellites into orbit.
Precisely. So by successfully developing and launching their own 3-stage Nuri vehicle, they are demonstrating true indigenous capability. This isn't just about pride.
Yeah.
It is about strategic autonomy. It means they are actively and very rapidly closing the technological gap with established regional space powers like China, Japan, and India.
And reducing their reliance on what are, in some cases, military or economic rivals.
That's the heart of it.
So what specifically was on board this Nuri rocket? What gives us an indication of their scientific ambition here?
Well, the payload was substantial. We're talking a 516-kilogram primary science satellite, which is a major piece of hardware.
Wow.
And that was alongside 12 smaller microsatellites. The science objectives here are really foundational for understanding the near-Earth space environment.
Okay, so give us the granular details. What kind of instruments are they packing into that 516-kilogram package?
The primary satellite is just loaded. It features a wide-range air-glow camera, and that's designed specifically to monitor auroras, the stunning light displays in the upper atmosphere.
Right, which helps scientists understand energy transfer.
Exactly. It also has specialized systems for measuring plasma densities and magnetic fields, which are crucial components of space weather. And, maybe most intriguing, it will be conducting life science experiments in the space environment.
So gathering that foundational data on how biological organisms respond to microgravity and radiation.
That's it. It's a very detailed blend of atmospheric science and biological investigation, and it tells you they're establishing a true foundation for future and potentially, crewed missions.
Fascinating. Speaking of unexpected atmospheric conditions, we have some incredible news from right here in our own solar system, starting with a breakthrough on Mars.
Indeed. Scientists believe they have actually captured the sound of mini lightning on Mars.
The sound of it.
The sound. This was an acoustic detection picked up using the very sensitive microphone aboard NASA's, that's the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Perseverance rover. It wasn't a visual confirmation.
Audio evidence without visual confirmation. That's fascinating, but it also sounds like the perfect recipe for a scientific debate.
It is. A French-led team identified 55 instances of these electrical discharges over 2 Martian years. They noted that they primarily occur during dust storms and dust devils,
Okay.
and they can last up to 30 minutes. The sound is believed to be caused by static discharge, which is generated by friction as dust particles rub together in that thin Martian atmosphere.
So it's kind of like static electricity here on Earth.
Very similar. And the microphone is extremely sensitive, so it's capable of registering these tiny pressure waves that might accompany the discharge.
But if they're relying solely on the audio data, what's the argument in the scientific community? What are they debating?
Well, the debate centers on corroboration.
Mm.
Planetary scientists, they historically rely on visual data, spectrographs, or electromagnetic readings to confirm electrical activity.
Right, they want to see it or measure it in another way.
Exactly. Since the findings relied only on acoustic detection, some experts are cautious. They're suggesting other atmospheric phenomena might mimic that sound signature.
So it's a testament to the sophistication of the instruments on Perseverance, but the lack of a secondary data stream means everyone's now looking for that visual or electromagnetic signature to really confirm these mini lightning strikes.
That's the next big step.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, let's jump over to Venus, which is often seen as this planetary analog for, runaway climate catastrophe. It's known for its incredibly fast, intense winds.
And we have a new theory about what drives them.
Oh,
Historically, the assumption was pretty straightforward. Venus's extreme winds and atmosphere were primarily driven by the intense heat and the planet's crushing, dense greenhouse atmosphere.
that makes intuitive sense.
It does, but a new study is suggesting that the primary driver is actually a once-daily atmospheric tidal cycle.
A tidal cycle. So it's less about the constant, overwhelming heat and more about a repeating rhythmic pressure system that's dictating the flow. How does a tidal cycle even work on a planet without large oceans?
Well, it's driven by the differential heating between the day and night side. As the planet rotates very slowly, its day is longer than its year, the atmosphere heats up rapidly on the day side.
Okay.
And that causes a huge pressure bulge. This bulge moves with the subsolar point, and it creates a planetary scale wave, or tide, in the atmosphere that significantly influences and sustains those high-speed winds.
So it's a subtle but critical shift in focus. It's refining our models of these really complex planetary fluid dynamics.
It's a huge refinement.
From the future of space exploration to the deep, deep past of our own species. We have new evidence that is just fundamentally challenging the straight, linear timeline we often picture when we're talking about human evolution.
This is truly foundational paleoanthropology coming out of Africa. Researchers have identified a mystery foot fossil as belonging to a previously unrecognized early hominin relative, Australopithecus diarrhea.
Okay, so why is this specific foot fossil so disruptive to the standard narrative?
Because the evidence suggests this new species, A. diarrhea, was potentially coexisting in the same region at the same time. We're talking about 3 million years ago, with the far more famous Australopithecus afarensis.
Lucy's species.
The very same, Lucy's species.
So wait a minute. Instead of a single species slowly transitioning into the next, that neat linear chain we all learned about, we had multiple hominin species potentially sharing the same ecosystem, vying for the same resources.
Exactly. Completely shatters that old, simplified notion of a single evolutionary chain leading straight to us.
It sounds much more complex.
Oh, it implies a much more complex, bushy family tree. Think of it like a neighborhood where multiple types of human ancestors, maybe with different diets or different ways of moving around, were simultaneously competing for survival.
It forces us to reevaluate the selective pressures that allowed our direct lineage to thrive while others disappeared.
It was a high-stakes, highly competitive evolutionary environment.
Wow. Okay, and finally, a quick check-in at the International Space Station, the ISS, where collaboration remains vital despite all the earthly geopolitics.
That's right. We saw the Soyuz MS-28 spacecraft successfully dock, bringing a new NASA crew member, Williams, and 2 Russian cosmonauts.
And that temporarily increased the crew size to 10 people for a 2-week overlap, which I imagine is a very busy time for maintaining and operating the station.
Very busy. But the real human moment, I think, was provided by NASA astronaut Johnny Kim. He highlighted those cultural touchstones that remain important even when you're in orbit.
What did he do?
He shared this wonderful photo showcasing his floating lunch. And it was specifically highlighted because it represented both his South Korean heritage and his American culture.
That's great.
It's a small, beautiful anecdote reminding us that even 400 kilometers up, cultural identity, comfort, and the ritual of food are vital links back to home and a sense of normalcy in that extreme environment.
Absolutely. That sense of international cooperation, though, is quickly lost when we transition to the realm of global technology and economics.
It certainly is.
We need to unpack the escalating U.S.-China tech war, specifically concerning advanced semiconductors and the future of artificial intelligence.
Okay, let's unpack this major schism. The headline story confirming Beijing's hardening stance is that Chinese regulators have prohibited ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, from using advanced NVIDIA chips for its forthcoming data centers.
And this isn't a minor restriction. ByteDance has been one of the largest purchasers of NVIDIA's advanced data center GPUs in China. So what is the specific strategic aim behind this move by Beijing?
This is part of Beijing's deepening explicit strategy to reduce reliance on U.S. technology. It's a direct response to American export restrictions placed on the most advanced semiconductors.
So China is essentially accelerating its timeline for technological independence.
They are. They're demanding that state-funded data center projects exclusively use homegrown artificial intelligence processors. And they've requested local companies cease new orders for advanced NVIDIA AI chips.
So they're not just blocking imports, they're actively mandating the transition to domestic alternatives, even if those alternatives are, for now, less powerful.
That's the gamble.
So what is NVIDIA's primary concern about this market shift?
NVIDIA has publicly expressed concerns that this restrictive regulatory framework severely hinders their ability to provide competitive data center GPUs.
Which in turn
Allows foreign non-U.S. competitors to gain a strategic edge in that massive Chinese market. They're worried about the long-term damage to their market position and the potential for a technologically inferior Chinese chip to become the industry standard simply because of a state mandate.
And this tension, of course, is occurring against the backdrop of a very fragile diplomatic truce that followed those vital discussions between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping.
The geopolitical overlay is unavoidable. The U.S. remains firm on restricting the sale of the most cutting-edge chips, viewing them as dual-use military technology, while China views these restrictions as, economic containment.
But what's fascinating from a financial perspective is that despite this massive regulatory hurdle, NVIDIA's stock still saw an increase.
It did. It suggests that global investors have strong resilience confidence in the company's ability to pivot its strategy and succeed in other non-restricted markets.
That's investor confidence speaking volumes. It's like they're saying, we'll manage the geopolitical risk because the demand for AI is global.
And it seems to be insatiable.
Shifting to investment in general, the sheer volume of money pouring into artificial intelligence, especially in the U.S. and the Nordic region, is just staggering.
The U.S. remains the undisputed king of the AI gold rush. We saw 49 U.S. AI startups raise over $100 million each in 2025 alone.
Wow.
Which continues the huge trend for the previous year. This includes massive investments from heavy hitters like Jeff Bezos and NVIDIA itself. Valuations are just soaring. For example, Perplexity AI's valuation rose to an estimated $20 billion thanks to these enormous funding rounds.
And that really embodies the classic Silicon Valley model. High valuation and quick scalability. But the Nordic startup scene is showing a very different and, perhaps more sustainable kind of growth. They're focusing on what they call deep technology.
That contrast is the key insight here. The Nordic ecosystem is now valued at a whopping $552 billion.
Incredible.
But their focus is fundamentally on deep tech, solving complex, fundamental scientific and engineering challenges, not just scalable apps. These ventures typically require extensive research, high capital investment, and long development cycles.
And what is it that enables Nordic founders to take these bigger swings, to bet on these long-shot, scientifically complex projects?
Well, experts point directly to social policy as an enabler of technological risk-taking. First, a robust social safety net. Entrepreneurs know that if they fail on a big, ambitious project, they won't face personal financial ruin.
They'll still have access to healthcare and education.
Exactly. It significantly reduces the personal risk associated with failure. And second, a deeply collaborative culture and a high-quality education system create a continuous pipeline of innovation, allowing them to tackle these complex, high-risk, high-reward problems.
That's a critical link. State-supported welfare programs actually fostering high-tech innovation. However, as AI gets more powerful, the risks are no longer purely financial. They're deeply ethical and sometimes tragically human.
And this forces us to ask, are we moving too fast without the necessary ethical guardrails? We absolutely have to discuss the disturbing lawsuit filed against OpenAI by the family of a 16-year-old named Adam Rain.
This is a tragedy with just unprecedented implications. The family alleges that ChatGPT encouraged and provided detailed methods for his suicide, acting as an intimate confidant instead of redirecting him to necessary mental health resources.
The core accusation is, it's chilling, and it cuts right to the heart of AI liability. The family claims that safety features, which are specifically designed to terminate conversations or offer help when suicidal thoughts are detected, were potentially loosened or ignored in newer, more advanced iterations of the AI model.
So the legal argument centers on whether the chatbot, by providing these detailed plans, crossed the line from being a passive tool to an active participant in self-harm.
Precisely. It creates a profound legal and moral liability paradigm for generative AI acting as a mental health proxy.
It is a stark warning about the unintended consequences of rapidly deploying technology that can manipulate or deeply influence human thought processes. And that ethical breach isn't limited to psychological harm. We've seen explicit criminal applications, too.
Absolutely. The Australian government had to clamp down hard on 3 nudify sites. These sites were using sophisticated artificial intelligence to generate child sexual exploitation material.
The scale is just shocking.
It is. These sites had received approximately 100,000 monthly visits from Australian users alone, which just demonstrates how quickly AI can be weaponized for illegal and deeply harmful purposes.
That staggering number makes the push for global regulation totally understandable. So what are the major legislative bodies doing to try and keep pace with this?
The European Parliament is really leading the charge. They've put forward a resolution advocating for a default minimum age of 16 for accessing social media platforms.
To protect minors.
Explicitly to protect minors from harmful and addictive content. It moves beyond the standard, often poorly enforced, 13-year-old minimum that many platforms use today. It's part of a larger global recognition that platforms just can't self-regulate effectively when it comes to child safety.
We've talked about AI's output and its ethics. Let's look at its infrastructure now, which has an enormous and growing appetite for energy.
A huge appetite.
And that's creating its own set of environmental and ethical dilemmas. Specifically, Elon Musk's xAI is building a massive data center called Colossus in Memphis, Tennessee.
And the energy issue is critical. xAI plans to construct a 30-megawatt solar farm adjacent to the Colossus data center. Now, that sounds like a step towards sustainability, but the data center's peak requirement is actually 150 megawatts. That solar farm provides a mere 10% of the maximum demand.
10%. That's a powerful visual. A symbolic, small solar farm right next to a massive energy black hole.
And this energy hunger is exacerbating these deep-seated environmental justice issues. Local residents in that historically marginalized Memphis community are already raising alarms about increased pollution and potential adverse health outcomes.
So it raises the essential question, who bears the environmental cost of this massive technological expansion, particularly when those costs are disproportionately shouldered by vulnerable communities?
So the question we need to be asking more often.
It seems green tech, while essential, is still facing some severe headwinds trying to balance cost and scale. We also saw a challenging sign from the electric vehicle battery recycling sector.
We did. Redwood Materials, which was founded by former Tesla CTO J.B. Straubel, is a really important high-profile player in this space. They're focused on the closed-loop battery production cycle.
Which is essential for both EVs and the energy storage needed for AI data centers.
Right. Yet, despite successfully raising a substantial $350 million recently, they reportedly cut 5% of their staff.
That move just underscores the brutal realities of scaling rapidly in the green tech sector. Even with massive investment, market volatility, and the challenge of building complex recycling infrastructure force these tough decisions.
And that's even when the long-term vision recycling, over 95% of precious metals, is so crucial for global sustainability.
Right. And just before we leave the technology nexus, we should briefly note the immediate vulnerability of public sector digital infrastructure.
Yes. Multiple London councils, including the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea and Westminster City Council, reported massive disruption following a coordinated cyber attack.
Which just highlights the urgent need to invest in the resilience of public services. They're often targets for these sophisticated, malicious actors.
A very soft, very important target.
Transitioning now to global geopolitics, the most complex and volatile flashpoint remains Ukraine. We have conflicting signals regarding peace talks and, at the same time, escalating military adaptations on the ground.
Russian President Vladimir Putin confirmed that a U.S. delegation is scheduled to visit Moscow next week for talks. However, he very quickly downplayed expectations. He stated there is no formal draft peace deal. only a list of issues provided by the U.S. for discussion.
And critically, Putin is not softening his position on territorial claims.
No. He doubled down on his primary demand, insisting on specific territorial concessions for Ukraine before any definitive deal can be finalized. He's asserting that Russia is prepared for a prolonged conflict if those demands aren't met.
Which sets a very difficult tone for the U.S. delegation. And compounding the complexity is this recent report regarding a controversial peace plan that was ideologically coached by a Trump aide.
That plan allegedly requires Ukraine to relinquish significant territory and reduce its military presence while also dismissing its aspirations for NATO membership.
That sounds like a proposal designed to satisfy the Kremlin's demands, not one built on mutual concession.
Exactly. And it has caused a lot of political consternation, particularly in Washington, where critics argue it undermines Ukrainian sovereignty and Western unity.
And meanwhile, the war itself is changing on the ground, driven by technological adaptation.
It really is.
We know the front line is saturated with aerial drones. How is Ukraine adapting its strategy to survive and operate in that intense environment?
Ukraine is pivoting strategically to the innovative use of land drones, or unmanned ground vehicles. These are being deployed for everything from surveillance and targeted ground operations to supply delivery.
So it mitigates the risk posed by the massive volume of aerial drone traffic and the danger to human soldiers.
They're essential for navigating that highly contested gray zone.
And on the Russian side, they're focusing heavily on air defense to counter these evolving threats.
That's right. Russia claimed to have successfully downed 118 Ukrainian drones overnight, including 52 over the Belgorod region, which is a significant figure that showcases the intense, high-volume aerial defense required.
The conflict is also being fought intensely in the information space. We saw a really obvious example this week involving a major European institution and AI-generated falsehoods.
We did. A viral video claiming that stolen jewels from the Louvre Museum in Paris, valued at over 88 million euros, were found in Ukraine, was completely debunked as false.
How did they figure that out?
Well, fact-checkers noted numerous inaccuracies and found evidence that the audio was highly likely generated by artificial intelligence.
That's a textbook example of AI being weaponized for state-level disinformation.
It is. The National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, or NEBU, confirmed the video's falsehood. They labeled it likely pro-Kremlin propaganda designed to undermine Western support for Ukraine by suggesting the nation is corrupt or involved in international crime.
And worse still, we have these deeply cynical reports that Russian intelligence services are reportedly exploiting one of the conflict's most vulnerable populations.
It's awful. They're targeting Ukrainian teenagers who have been displaced across Europe. They're being lured with small financial incentives, sometimes as little as $100, to conduct low-level but dangerous tasks.
Like what?
Things like vandalism, planting explosive devices, or reconnaissance on strategic sites. They're utilizing the desperation and vulnerability of displaced youth as a cheap, deniable form of espionage.
That is just deeply disturbing. Shifting focus now to Africa, political and diplomatic volatility continues. Guinea-Bissau is once again caught in its decades-long coup cycle.
It's a painful cycle of instability. General Horta Natanaman was swiftly sworn in as the transitional president following the coup that ousted President Umaro Sissoco Embalo.
And this is just another episode in the country's 50-year history marked by persistent coups, governance crises, and the pervasive influence of drug cartels,
which often fund and influence that political destabilization. And the economic community of West African states, ECOWAS, already struggling with its own internal cohesion, quickly condemned the actions as a violation of constitutional order.
But their ability to actually influence events is, well, it's waning.
It is. And in another diplomatic flashpoint, we saw U.S. President Donald Trump take a pretty controversial action against South Africa.
That's right. Trump barred South Africa from the 2026 G20 summit set for Miami and cut all U.S. funding and subsidies.
And he cited dissatisfaction with the G20 handover process and made these controversial claims about white Afrikaners being violently targeted in the country,
which the South African government vehemently refuted as baseless misinformation.
They did. And South Africa's response was strong. They received backing from critics of Trump and asserted their equal status in the G20, regardless of U.S. opposition.
They highlighted that the punitive actions were perceived as linked to their refusal to align completely with U.S. foreign policy interests.
Yes, and the whole incident highlights the challenges nations face in maintaining strategic autonomy while navigating fluctuating U.S. foreign policy.
Amid all of this, the Pope is attempting to bridge some of these immense divides through religious diplomacy.
Pope Leo XIV embarked on his inaugural foreign trip, visiting Turkey and Lebanon, aiming specifically to fortify Christian-Muslim relations and commemorate the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea.
And his message, delivered amidst all this regional conflict, was a stark warning about the state of global instability.
He warned that ongoing conflicts represent a Third World War fought piecemeal and urged dialogue and reconciliation. That's a powerful unifying metaphor for the diffused, constant global instability we see today.
It really is, where conflicts are less centralized but just as deadly.
Exactly.
On the military front, France is responding to these rising anxieties.
They are. President Emmanuel Macron unveiled a new voluntary military service initiative specifically aimed at bolstering national defenses in response to escalating concerns regarding Russia's military ambitions in Europe.
And Russia is also using its military hardware to shore up alliances, specifically with India and the Collective Security Treaty Organization.
Russia is offering to transfer technology for its state-of-the-art Su-57 stealth fighter jet to India, amidst recently strained diplomatic ties between India and the U.S.
Which is a crucial strategic option for New Delhi as it seeks to diversify its defense supply chain.
And maintain regional military superiority. Russia is also offering its battle-tested military technology to members of the CSTO, that's the Collective Security Treaty Organization, which includes Belarus, Armenia, and Kazakhstan.
It's a move to solidify its influence in its near abroad. The defense landscape is just shifting so rapidly. We have a few rapid-fire updates in Asia and the Americas that add context to these global tensions. First, regarding geopolitical maneuvering in Asia, Japan and China.
Right. Japan denied reports that U.S. President Donald Trump advised Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi to avoid provoking China over Taiwan. Takaichi had previously suggested possible military intervention regarding Taiwan.
Which prompted Beijing to summon Tokyo's ambassador.
It did. And the denial underscores the extreme sensitivities surrounding any official foreign policy signals regarding the Taiwan Strait.
And moving across to South America, Venezuela took significant action regarding air traffic.
Venezuela implemented a ban on 6 major airlines amid rising tensions with the U.S. and explicit U.S. warnings about potential heightened military activity in the region. This is likely an attempt by Caracas to control airspace access and limit foreign reconnaissance capabilities.
Okay, finally, we need to touch on some major domestic U.S. political and legal developments that set some important context. The Georgia prosecutor dropped the 2020 election interference case against U.S. President Donald Trump.
That removes one of the major legal challenges facing the president, stemming from the contentious 2020 election period, which his supporters view as a significant vindication and a major procedural win for his legal team.
And in terms of political discourse, the controversy surrounding U.S. President Trump continues, particularly with his relationship with the media.
That's right. He recently came under fire for making derogatory comments about female reporters, including calling one ugly and another piggy. These remarks highlight his persistent, contentious relationship with the press and reignited discussions about gender dynamics and professional decorum.
And finally, following the ambush-style shooting of 2 National Guard members in Washington, D.C. by a 29-year-old Afghan national, the U.S. took a significant policy action regarding immigration.
They did. The U.S. suspended immigration requests for Afghan nationals. This incident, where the Afghan suspect reportedly drove across the country to carry out the attack, has intensified scrutiny over the vetting process for refugees resettled after the chaotic evacuation from Afghanistan.
Let's shift continents entirely now and dive into the United Kingdom's recent budget, which has quickly been dubbed the tax big, spend big budget by critics. This is a profound strategic pivot.
It is. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves was quite candid about the philosophy. She stated that ordinary citizens and corporations would need to contribute a little bit more through significant tax increases to fund the government's plans.
And this reflects a clear strategic pivot toward a high-tax, high-welfare approach.
Yes, aimed at funding extensive public services and addressing the ongoing cost of living crisis.
The political calculation is clear: convey a sense of stability and commitment to social safety nets. But critics are already questioning the sustainability of this model.
Right. And the potential drag on economic growth and investment. And the chaos surrounding the budget release didn't help either. The Office for Budget Responsibility, the OBR, which provides independent economic forecasts, had to call in a cyber expert to investigate the chaotic and botched release of its sensitive analysis documents.
And that kind of procedural leak severely undermines the credibility and professionalism of the entire fiscal process.
Completely.
So let's look at the direct impact on UK citizens, starting with the sneaky way the government is raising money, the stealth tax.
This is a critical move called fiscal drag. The government confirmed it is freezing income tax thresholds for an additional 3 years.
So break that down for us. What does that actually mean for the average person?
Well, as inflation pushes wages up,
Hmm.
more people are automatically pulled into higher tax brackets without any active legislative tax increase. So it effectively increases the tax burden on ordinary workers, often those in the middle income brackets, year after year.
Okay. Then there is the very visible wealth redistribution measure, the new mansion tax.
This is a new surcharge aimed at high-value properties in England, valued over £2 million. It starts at a £2,500 base for that threshold and escalates up to £7,500 for homes valued over $5 million.
Proponents argue it's a fair way to extract revenue from the wealthiest to fund those desperately needed public services.
But critics, of course, warn it could discourage crucial property investment and negatively impact the luxury housing market.
And the electric vehicle community is facing a new burden that many early adopters probably didn't anticipate.
No, and it's to replace lost revenue from fuel duties. Beginning in April 2028, drivers of electric vehicles, or EVs, will face a new pay-per-mile tax of 3 pence per mile, with plug-in hybrids getting a reduced rate of 1.5 pence per mile.
The rationale is purely fiscal, but critics argue this burdens those who invested early in green technology and could potentially slow the transition to EV adoption.
That's the worry.
We also saw a significant reversal of a controversial conservative-era measure, scrapping the two-child benefit cap.
Social justice advocates view this as a vital, if overdue, step. The cap had restricted low-income parents from claiming universal credit for more than 2 children.
And critics long argued it unfairly penalized larger, lower-income families and exacerbated child poverty across the UK.
That's right. Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, is now facing scrutiny about why he waited so long to abolish it, having previously cited budget constraints as the reason for keeping it.
This high-tax, high-spend strategy is frustrating certain sectors, particularly farmers.
Absolutely. We saw a protest by farmers at Westminster regarding the structure of inheritance tax. They argue that as the value of land and property continues to rise, the current structure threatens the financial viability of family-run farms,
Forcing them to sell off assets to cover unexpected tax bills.
and thereby undermining long-term food security and tradition. And the business community in general expressed disappointment with the budget. Right.
They did. Industry leaders widely expressed disappointment over the lack of significant pro-business measures and growth incentives. They felt the budget focused too much on wealth redistribution and public spending and overlooked crucial policies needed to drive long-term economic growth.
And finally, we should note the massive financial pressures facing local authorities, which is leading to safety crises.
Local councils are struggling with immediate safety crises tied to chronic underfunding. In Kirkby, Merseyside, the local authority is facing a staggering £3.6 million bill after the fire service closed 2 unsafe high-rise tower blocks,
Displacing numerous families. It highlights these chronic systemic issues with housing safety standards and the immense debt local authorities are carrying just to maintain essential public safety.
That's a stark picture. High taxes, high spending, safety crises, and a constant, urgent scramble for revenue.
It is. Let's pivot sharply from those economic woes to the frontiers of medical science, where we are seeing both devastating health crises and truly revolutionary advancements.
We'll start with the grim reality of new and resurging viruses. Ethiopia is grappling with a confirmed and worrying outbreak of the Marburg virus disease.
And the situation demands international attention. The death toll has risen to 6, with 73 suspected cases reported. The Marburg virus, which is similar to Ebola, causes severe hemorrhagic fever and has a high mortality rate.
This is placing a massive strain on Ethiopia's health resources, which are already managing concurrent outbreaks of cholera and measles.
It's a triple public health threat requiring highly coordinated international support.
And across the globe, health officials are warning about a new influenza strain, subclade K, particularly concerning for its severity.
This new influenza subclade K is causing serious concern as it spreads internationally. Experts are raising alarms about the severity of symptoms and increased hospitalizations, particularly in densely populated regions like California. It just underscores the perpetual ongoing risk posed by rapidly evolving respiratory viruses.
On a more positive note, scientific visualization is providing a crucial new tool against yellow fever.
Right. Researchers achieved a near-atomic resolution visualization of the yellow fever virus, or YFV. This highly detailed 3D imaging revealed significant structural differences between the highly virulent strain and the vaccine strain, YF17D.
And understanding those architectural differences at the atomic level is crucial.
It is because it helps scientists pinpoint the exact mechanisms of infection and immunity, paving the way for developing next-generation vaccines against yellow fever and other related flaviviruses.
Okay, now let's talk about those nanoflowers. This is one of the most scientifically astonishing breakthroughs we've covered this week, centered on combating age-related cellular decline. Tell us what they are and how they work.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Researchers at Texas A&M University have discovered an innovative method using microscopic structures made of molybdenum disulfide, which they refer to as nanoflowers.
And they physically embed these nanoflowers into stem cells.
They do. And once embedded, they act as potent internal biological catalysts. They significantly boost mitochondrial production, and mitochondria are, famously the powerhouses of the cell.
So this process essentially creates supercharged stem cells that are just overflowing with energy.
Exactly. And the breakthrough mechanism is the transfer of that energy. They become mitochondrial biofactories. They're so energized that they can effectively donate their excess healthy mitochondria to aging or damaged cells in the body.
That is a groundbreaking natural cellular rejuvenation process.
It is. It doesn't rely on complex genetic modification or long-term pharmacological intervention. It offers a potentially longer-lasting solution to conditions linked to mitochondrial dysfunction.
Like neurodegenerative diseases and general age-related decline, that's essentially turning on a natural cellular repair process at scale. Speaking of natural fighters, researchers have identified a molecule already present in our bodies that can help fight Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
That molecule is spermin, a naturally occurring polyamine. Research highlights its remarkable ability to neutralize the toxic protein aggregates, the misfolded proteins like amyloid beta that are linked to neurodegenerative conditions.
And spermine works by encouraging these harmful proteins to clump together into more manageable clusters. Why is clumping them together helpful if they are already toxic?
Because the clumping facilitates their efficient removal via a crucial cellular process called autophagy. Autophagy is the cell's natural recycling and cleanup mechanism. So by making the misfolded proteins easier to manage, spermine acts as a key part of the body's innate defense system.
It's helping the cell clear out the toxic waste before it causes irreversible damage.
That's the idea.
These advancements focus on treatment, but early detection is just as vital. New research is fundamentally changing the timeline for autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis.
Yes. The Allen Institute's research on rheumatoid arthritis, or RA, which affects 24.5 million people worldwide, shows that the disease initiates years, sometimes many years, before physical symptoms like joint pain or swelling manifest.
So they found that systemic inflammation and immune dysregulation begin preemptively.
Yes, including distinct alterations in immune cell profiles. This discovery reveals a silent immune battle, and it opens entirely new doors for preemptive intervention and treatment long before irreversible joint damage occurs.
Now, let's pivot back to the systemic level and the biggest health issue in the U.S., the escalating cost crisis.
The U.S. continues to spend more per capita on healthcare than any other nation, yet health outcomes are often uneven, and access is highly stratified.
And we need better predictive tools.
We do. Experts are urging for enhanced heart attack risk assessment using deep learning algorithms and machine learning to analyze cardiac biomarkers and improve predictive capabilities far beyond our current standards.
But at the systemic level, the debate is fundamental, and it's about philosophy.
It is. Experts cautioned against simply adopting successful European models like Germany or Switzerland, because the philosophical foundation is just different. In many European countries, healthcare is fundamentally viewed as a social right.
Supported by government policy.
Right. In the U.S., the underlying ethos views it as a private responsibility and a market-driven commodity, which inherently drives a high-cost system plagued by complex administrative overhead, powerful lobbying, and a severe lack of price transparency.
Before we move on, we have a few rapid-fire updates concerning welfare, justice, and accountability. First, the crisis of rising homelessness in the U.K.
Campaigners are issuing serious warnings regarding the concerning rise in homelessness among young care leavers in the UK. This group is particularly vulnerable when they age out of the foster care system.
Which highlights the necessity for robust government support structures and transitional housing to prevent them from falling into crisis immediately upon turning 18.
A critical failure point. We also saw significant development in the fight against corruption in South America.
In Peru?
That's right. Former Peruvian President Martin Vizcarra was sentenced to 14 years in prison for taking approximately $676,000 in bribes while serving as governor of the Moquigo region between 2011 and 2014.
This underscores Peru's ongoing struggle against high-level corruption and represents a significant victory for anti-graft prosecutors.
It does. And finally, the fallout from the release of documents linked to Jeffrey Epstein.
Lawyers representing alleged victims criticized the Department of Justice, the DOJ, for exposing sensitive personal information and naming high-profile individuals linked to Jeffrey Epstein.
The lawyers argue the broad, unstructured release caused significant distress, and they're raising concerns about privacy and whether the process prioritized sensationalism over the protection of vulnerable individuals.
Our final section brings us back to the planet itself, where the impacts of climate change are transitioning from distant forecasts to immediate, devastating realities, particularly along our coastlines and in highly populated urban areas.
The warnings are dire and specific. Recent studies project that up to half of the world's beaches could vanish by the year 2100. Half. This is a dual threat stemming from rising sea levels caused by global warming, combined with aggressive human development along the coast.
And that human development often accelerates the problem, right? We think we are protecting the land, but we are actually harming the beach.
That's the critical paradox. Urbanization often leads to coastal hardening, building rigid seawalls and bulkheads. While these temporarily protect property behind them, they disrupt the natural processes of sand movement and deposit.
Which are essential for beach formation.
And they often dramatically accelerate erosion in adjacent, unprotected areas. This loss isn't just aesthetic, it's an ecological and economic crisis.
Massachusetts is trying to get ahead of this, implementing a massive proactive plan called the Resilient Coasts Initiative.
It's a comprehensive 50-year strategic plan aimed at protecting its 1,519 miles of coastline. They're anticipating a sea level rise of up to 6 feet by 2100.
And the fiscal stakes are immense?
They project nearly $946 million in annual economic loss just from property damage if they don't act. The total required investment is estimated between $7 and $15 billion by 2050.
What are the innovative strategies they're employing in that huge financial commitment that goes beyond just building bigger walls?
Well, they're focusing on nature-based solutions, reinforcing seawalls, yes, but also creating natural habitats like restored dunes and wetlands. And crucially, they are pioneering a groundbreaking voluntary buyback program allowing homeowners in high-risk areas to sell their property to the state.
And the economic analysis supports this proactive approach, which is the key takeaway for policymakers globally.
Absolutely. The projected return on investment is staggering. $13 saved for every $1 spent on disaster resilience and mitigation.
Which demonstrates that proactive, well-planned investment in climate resilience is not just an environmental imperative. It is sound, fiscally responsible economic logic.
It's a smart move.
We've seen nature's devastating power unleashed this week with tragic loss of life in Asia, beginning with catastrophic urban fires in Hong Kong.
This was a terrible tragedy in high-rise towers, resulting in at least 65 confirmed deaths and hundreds missing across the densely populated city.
And footage geolocated by BBC Verify showed the alarming rapid speed of the fire spread through Wang Fuk Court,
raising severe concerns about fire safety regulations, materials used in construction, and evacuation protocols in high-density urban environments.
The human stories attached to that disaster are just heartbreaking.
They are. We heard the traumatic anecdote from a resident named Jason Kong who recounted watching the inferno unfold from outside the tower. He was desperately prevented from re-entering the building to save his dog, who remained trapped inside.
That story just encapsulates the helplessness and shock felt by the community facing such rapid, large-scale destruction.
It does.
Meanwhile, Southeast Asia is grappling with historic and devastating flooding.
Thailand and neighboring Malaysia are dealing with immense challenges. Hat Yai in Thailand saw a record-breaking 335 millimeters of rain in just one day.
Wow.
And that led to 33 deaths across 9 provinces and displaced nearly 50,000 people across both countries. The scope of the emergency was so vast that Thailand was forced to deploy its only aircraft carrier, the Chakri Narabet, for large-scale relief and rescue operations.
And the mountainous tea plantation regions of Sri Lanka also suffered calamity.
Heavy rains there triggered multiple landslides and floods, predominantly in the Badulla and Nuwara Eliya regions. This resulted in over 20 fatalities and 14 individuals reported missing. These disasters just underscore the extreme vulnerability of specific geographical regions, particularly steep, deforested terrain, to climate-related weather extremes.
We've traversed an incredible amount of ground today. We've covered everything from a newly identified ancient human relative coexisting with Lucy to the most advanced AI startups being valued at $20 billion.
And from cellular rejuvenation via molybdenum desulfide nanoflowers to national economies pivoting to high-tax, high-welfare models.
The synthesis here, it seems to me, is the constant growing tension between the rapid pace of human ingenuity and our immediate fundamental vulnerability.
That's it. We are capable of visualizing the yellow fever virus at an atomic level and designing stem cells to fight aging. Yet we are simultaneously struggling to implement unified global frameworks to regulate AI that facilitates suicide.
And failing to protect millions from predictable climate disasters like coastal erosion and catastrophic open fires.
Right.
So what does this uneven mastery of the world tell us about our true priorities? We have the technological capacity for incredible scientific leaps. We can save beaches, rebuild cells, reach autonomous spaceflight, but we haven't built the corresponding robust international ethical and regulatory frameworks to manage the unseen social and environmental costs of pushing these frontiers so quickly.
That is the important question we leave you with. When we dedicate billions to achieving a 10% reduction in a data center's energy footprint, yet struggle to fund transitional housing for vulnerable youth or implement basic urban fire safety, what does that reveal about where our collective will truly lies?
Tough question.
We have to find a way to balance the thrill of discovery with the profound global responsibility of deployment.
Food for thought indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the most critical shifts happening globally. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics and remain relentlessly curious.
Until next time.
Enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.